Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
That kid is back on the escalator again.
Pain don't hurt.
Is my boomstick!
Game over, man. Game over.
Welcome to the Bargain Bin. He is your host, Ben Mason.
And he is your co-host, Sandra Luketic. And today we're talking about 1990's Pump Up the Volume. We assume if you're listening to this episode, you've already seen the movie. Now, Sandra, let's not kid ourselves here. This movie was specifically made for teenagers, not people in their 30s. But having said that, what did you think of this movie?
I'm torn on this one if I should be evaluating it for its merits as a movie or its merits as the message that it's trying to convey.
Yep, I think the exact same thing.
So in that regard, I think there's a lot to dissect, and we'll see what we get to, I guess.
All right, well, let's just hop right into the movie then.
I do want to point out the irony that we are discussing this movie on our podcast.
Oh, that's something that will come up repeatedly throughout this, I'm sure.
Sure. Actually, before we get into the plot, I want to address one thing.
Okay.
The title of the movie.
I don't understand it, do you?
It doesn't fit the movie to me. Like, I hear Pump Up the Volume, and I think some, like, Bring It On cheerleader thing or dance competition. Like, it feels too, like, high energy for what this is. I think even taking one of the slogans that he uses during the course of the movie, which might be a little more vague, you know, like think hard or so be it or whatever, like something, I'm sure, like more clever minds can come up with something, although maybe they couldn't because they came up with Pump Up the Volume. But like the name doesn't fit the movie at all.
It does in retrospect, but if you had never heard anything about this movie and someone recommended it to you by title alone, you would have no idea what you're getting into.
No, at all. I mean, I think even something like, you know, Speak Out or something, like it can be basic, but like Pump Up the Volume? Not at all what it should be at all.
Well, the way the film poster lays itself out, Pump Up the Volume almost seems like it's the tail end of the tagline, because the poster has a black and white photo of Christian Slater, our hero, Mark, and in the foreground it has, in red font, Talk Hard, then Steal the Air, then Pump Up the Volume.
See, even
now,
like
I think that makes more sense about getting your message across loudly as opposed to just pump up the volume, which makes me think turn up the music.
Like, even if the title was like Stealing the Airwaves, like at least I'd have a better idea of what I was getting into.
Yeah, I agree. Even just Talk Hard, like you said earlier, would be the perfect title for this movie.
Yeah, because I mean it's a slogan. It's especially once you watch the movie, and to be honest, it's not any less vague than Pump Up the Volume in regards to what you're getting into. But once you watch the movie, in my opinion, it would make more sense than Pump Up the Volume.
Yeah,
anyway,
I agree with you.
That's my complete derailing of the process by getting into something like that before we even start talking about the plot.
All right, well, let's talk about the plot. Actually, just go for a short... Well, this isn't really going to be a short synopsis. Let's not kid ourselves. But the film starts off with Happy Harry Hardon, our anonymous, not even avatar, what would you call it? Call sign of our main character, Mark, while we're panning over the view of the suburbs where we suppose he lives. Just giving us an idea of what we're in for. A cynical look on life from somebody who's never really experienced it.
I mean, it's a good way to start the movie because the intro monologue not only gives you an idea of what he's doing, but it also kind of gives you a bit more of a background on him.
Good point. You definitely understand his stance on life. We then cut to daytime, next day, or maybe that. Like I assume that was the previous night, but it was definitely a day for night shot, so it could have been late night, early morning. But we cut to daytime on the school bus, where people are passing around a tape of the previous night's show. Which actually made me really happy because it reminded me of the early days of tape trading. I don't know if you ever did that with your friends, but recording albums from tape to tape and passing them around?
I didn't pass them around, but I do remember like playing a CD with one of those like tape recorders attached to it where you could like copy it over to have one for yourself. Just to point out, it's clearly his speech is clearly the night before. He doesn't do anything. He comes on at 10 o'clock.
Yes. Or 9:52.
Or whenever he feels like it in the area.
Yeah, I know. I assumed it was the night before, but it's just really bad editing.
Yeah.
The school bus arrives at the school, and one thing that really caught me off guard is how many students are actually being stopped getting off the bus by some sort of school authoritarian figure.
It was two.
To that time.
To that time, yes. The first thing we see, I mean, it happens later in the movie, but in this situation, it's just the two, and they don't say it, but I inferred that it was a couple.
Oh, really? I just assumed it was completely unrelated students.
Well, I mean, we'll get into it, I guess, but I'm going to say it now. The one gets pulled aside because she's pregnant.
Oh, that was Cheryl? I completely missed that.
Yeah. So my assumption when I saw it the second time, because the first time obviously it was just two random students. But the second time watching it, I'm like, oh, maybe he's the guy who knocked her up.
Oh, interesting. I didn't pick up on that the second time. That would make perfect sense.
But, I mean, at no point in the movie do they go into detail on why he was expelled. So I'm just assuming the fact that they were pulled aside as a couple and her expulsion is because she's pregnant means that they were a couple. That's, again, just my assumption.
I think you're right on that one. I will definitely pay attention to that the next time I watch it, whenever that'll be.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, and then what happens next? The popular girl gets dropped off by her dad?
Well, we have... I don't know if that's then, but I just jumped right to Nora telling us about the Happy Harry Hard-On character and how he's a total sex maniac. Which we then cut to Mark as Harry recording another show. And I love that he uses the opening theme of Leonard Cohen's Everybody Knows. It's one of my favorite songs, and I forgot that was his theme for this movie.
Well, it is the spot where, what is her name?
Paige?
Paige gets dropped off, because I found it really odd that the one guy is like hitting on her as she's getting out of the car, and then just says hi to her dad, and her dad is just like, yeah, that's cool, hit on my daughter. Like, he's like, anytime, and it's just like, that's cool.
Yeah, that is weird, because he calls her Mr. Page, or calls him Mr. Page.
Yep. And as she's getting out, he's like, yeah, anytime, Paige. And it's just like, even flash him a dirty look or something? I don't know. Like, cool.
Yeah, well, it's obvious that he's completely oblivious to what's going on in his daughter's life.
I mean...
And that's the first sign that we see where that's the case. As the movie progresses, you see it more and more.
How deep do you want me to dive into this? Because we're in the first scene of the movie.
Well, let's let it go a little bit longer.
Well, I mean, I don't think her dad comes up too much more in the movie. There's a couple of scenes. But I think it's more of a sign that he doesn't care what happens to her as long as the stuff that is more of a status symbol, like her getting into a good college, because she does have an interview with Yale or Harvard or something like that. Like, it's just a status symbol for him. But whatever.
Okay. It does come up again when she's listening to the show, and he's trying to tell her that she needs to get more sleep, and how she does so well studying, and how much she reads when all she does is listen to the radio.
Yeah, in that scene, he tells her, you got an interview tomorrow, and I think he says Yale.
So sad.
Whatever. So anyway.
Yes, next we see students on the phone with each other, trying to figure out who Harry is while the broadcast is airing. Others just hanging out listening to the show. You're seeing some kids are actually just holding the phone up to their radio, so whoever they're talking to will actually be able to listen to it as well, which I found kind of strange. It's like they don't have radios themselves, but I don't know. It was
that one was Nora. Nora was holding the phone to the radio, and I was just like, why?
Yeah.
Like,
right?
If it was like a tape record, like a microphone, okay, this is how she has to record it, fine. But like the phone, like one of her friends can't just turn on the radio?
Yeah, I found that was weird too. But again, like I said, I don't really remember 1990 that well. But I'm pretty sure most people had radios they could listen to in their room.
Yeah. And I can be honest with you, man. I almost gave up on the movie in this scene.
Why is that? Because it's two 90s?
It's too much masturbating.
Oh, yeah. Number 12 of the list of 100 things to do with your body when you're alone.
Yeah, like this whole radio portion to me, and again, I'm not a teenager, so maybe I don't know what's cool or pushing the envelope or whatever, is one that, in my opinion, is not one that you want to lead off earlier in the movie for people, because it's one of the least insightful ones for them. And
Agreed.
And it's like, in my opinion, when I was a teenager, I liked some of that, fart humor stuff. But listening to a radio station where a guy makes it sound like he's masturbating, or even if I believe that that's true, even though we see that he's not, why am I listening to that? That's not entertaining. I'm not getting anything from that.
It's shock radio, man. I mean, that's why Howard Stern was so popular. Just the ridiculous stuff he was willing to do on air. That's why he got canceled so many times and shipped around to so many different stations.
Yeah, but at least with Howard Stern, he made it like part of something, not just like I'm going to stop talking now and masturbate. Like,
it's just offensive for offensive sake. But yeah, keep in mind, like, this is definitely pre-internet, so people are really only, being shown what's on television or hearing what's on the radio. So there's nothing really outlandish that they can just pick to watch or listen to on their own. It's basically, this is what we have given to us. We can either listen to it and watch it, or we have nothing.
I will say, if I was doing a ranking of the different segments of him on the radio that we hear throughout this movie, which I absolutely did not do, so don't think I did, this one would be dead last. This one would be absolutely dead last. And I kept going, and like every time he was on the radio after this, it was much better. And I felt a little bit more like, hey, I can see why people are listening to this, because now he's actually being entertaining, but also like poking at things and investigating and being a little bit more hard-hitting. Whereas this one just felt like a waste to me.
It was a complete letdown after the opening voiceover.
Exactly.
Like, it felt like, well, it was after the fake masturbation where we see that scene with Paige sitting on her bed, obviously being unhappy about who she's being forced to be. And then Mark lets us know more about himself, which I'm not entirely sure why, saying that he's new to town, he has no friends, what's the point? And then fake masturbates again and goes off air.
See, here's the thing. Mark is obviously meant to be a very smart character and a very eccentric introvert who hides behind a microphone to reveal like more deeper meaning.
Yeah.
He's too smart to reveal so much information that would be damning to reveal who he is.
Oh, he's an incredibly intelligent idiot.
Yes. And to be honest, Christian Slater does an amazing job with it. But I just feel like they should have been a little bit more like, when, as you go in the movie and Nora is determined to uncover who he is, I'm sitting here thinking, how did she not figure it out sooner? He gives away hints every single time.
Every time.
Is it just that everybody else is even stupider?
You saw the movie, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all pretty dumb.
But, I mean, Christian Slater does do a great job. Like, when he's delivering these monologues, even if they are pointless or he's revealing information about like who he is, he really does put great emotion behind it.
Yeah, he definitely lives the role for sure.
His delivery is fantastic.
It's perfect. Yep. Which is one of the few times I can say that about Slater. Like, I love Christian Slater, but in my opinion, this is by far his best role.
So we see the part with Paige. Is this before or after Mark goes upstairs?
It's before.
Okay. Because she's still listening and he hasn't walked away yet. That makes sense.
Exactly, because then he goes upstairs and we meet the parents.
Before that, though, with Paige, the character specifically, I don't know if you want to talk about the actress or whatever. Do you find it odd that there's a movie where they've combined the popular, good-looking girl who's also the smart, like, Yale-bound character? Usually that's two different stereotypical characters in one of these teen movies, is it not?
Yeah, it kind of seems like they left out the popular for popular's sake character.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that. I hadn't really thought about that either until you brought it up just now. But do I think it's weird?
I didn't say weird. I said uncommon for
It is
cinematic.
very much uncommon.
For the cinematic universe, when you're making a teen movie, you have the popular girl who's just a cheerleader. She's good looking. She's popular because she's charismatic and outgoing and things like that. And then you have the valedictorian character who might be like really good, really stuck up, really wound tight. Different ways that you can take that character, but it's seldom in the cinematic universe to take those two characters and fuse them together.
Well, I believe that's because this entire movie is meant to empower the youth and show that everybody has more layers than adults seem to acknowledge or are willing to acknowledge. And I think trying to do that with the stereotypical airhead popular girl or jock guy would kind of be a detriment to their message.
No, I'm just saying it's out of the ordinary is all.
Oh, definitely. But I don't think it's accidental. I think there's reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I mean, they have to have layered characters, I guess.
Well, they try. They definitely try.
Okay, so I jumped ahead. So he goes upstairs and he sees his parents, and this was the first time in the movie that I was like, he's a bit of a jerk in real life.
Yeah.
If I didn't know any better, I would have thought that they were setting up some sort of relationship with the dad where maybe he's a stepdad and they don't get along. But, like, that's not the case, but he's such a jerk to him. And he doesn't even give a shit if, like, stealing documentation from him is going to put his job at risk. Like,
yeah, I thought about that too.
Like,
we should mention that his dad is like the new school commissioner or admissions commissioner or something along those lines.
Yeah, and like there's a conversation with the parents at the table where they discuss why they moved to this place and left all of his friends behind. It's because he had an opportunity for a great paying job. It's a good place to live, etc. And clearly this has led to him, you know, we're getting more background pieced together on why he's doing this.
Yeah.
But he's sorry, go ahead.
I was saying it must be a great paying job and that they must be living in such a nice new neighborhood, and that's where all of their money went because they bought the smallest kitchen table I've ever seen in my life. It fits 3 dinner plates and a bowl. That's it.
Either way, I thought it was odd how they kind of built Mark out as this jerk in this scene, and he goes upstairs to steal documentation from his dad. Doesn't care if that impacts him in any way or he gets caught, and just lies and says he's looking for stamps. And like, yeah, in this scene, the dad's like, no, there's, I forget what he says, like 1,200 students or something in the school. Is not one of them cool or whatever? And Mark gets so, like, he gets so defensive. He's like, oh, I thought the deal was if I get good grades, you'd leave me alone. And it's like, what did he do? Like, heavens forbid that he tried to talk to you and take an interest and try to help you with the transition. You should definitely snap at him for it.
Yeah, and his father and mother seem to be some of the most caring parents that you would see in one of these movies. Like, they're trying to understand, they just can't for some reason.
That's why when I saw this scene, because at this point they don't specify that he is his dad, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, are we later in the movie going to find out that he's like a stepfather and he's a bit of a jerk to Mark because it's not his like blood son or anything like that? They never have any sort of payoff or hint at why they have this relationship. He's just he's just
a jerk.
Yeah, he's a jerk.
He gets less jerky throughout though, so we'll let him slide.
Yes.
Well, yes. I'll let him slide.
Anyway, go on.
So next day at school, still people asking, you know, who is Happy Harry Hard-On? Who is this guy with his pirate radio show? He's playing music that the kids have never heard. Cuts into class time. In Mark's English class, we find out from his teacher that he's actually a really good writer. Shocking. I mean, the audience already knows that, so I guess that's for inner plot development.
I mean, great scene to develop the duality of his personalities that you're going to see. because
yes, but we as the audience already know that.
Do we know that he's an introvert when he's not on the radio prior to this scene?
Good point.
Right?
Probably not.
We haven't seen him in this environment yet. And you start that introduction with one thing that any student probably, well, most students had an issue with, was their stuff being read aloud. There's a self-consciousness to that. And
I always hated that in high school.
Exactly. And you can just see that he's cowering away from it even more than somebody else might. Like he's trying to like bury himself in his desk, and he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to, and like you just get all of these hints of being an introvert. And the teacher is suggesting like, hey, there's a spot on the newspaper. She says the name. I just assumed it was a newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can just see like he doesn't even want to make eye contact with her. He has no real reason to not do it other than he doesn't want to do it. And you get to see after this last, like you see him on the radio being happy, Harry hard on. You see him arguing with his parents, being a jerk. And then the next thing you see is him in school, not even able to communicate.
Yeah.
So I thought that was the perfect way to show that like night and day comparison.
Duality of the character.
Very well thought out way to introduce like Mark rather than Happy Harry.
Yeah. And speaking of introductions, it's because of him that apparently white suburbia is introduced to rap and hip hop, particularly in shop class.
That was weird.
It was really weird, man.
These two guys
felt so out of place.
Two guys are playing with a basketball. Another one just shows up and puts a tape in the guy's radio, which like that's not going to happen. Like,
no, there's no way. That's straight out of like some random commercial.
Like if there was two jocks, I guess I don't know if that's what you would assume they're wearing, like Letterman jackets. They're playing with a basketball. Are there? You're not going to just go and put a tape in their radio. They're gonna punch you.
But I guess it's stuff they wouldn't get on the radio, right? But still, if like someone walked up and just put that in their stereo, I guarantee they'd walk up and be like, "The fuck is that?"
Yeah, and I mean, especially the song that they're playing.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's not a corrupt school, they're not going to want that playing like, right there in the classroom. Like in this situation, the authority figure is fully justified to tell them to turn it off.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was a shock for everybody in like a 20-25 foot radius.
Yeah.
But also other tapes of the Harry persona are popping up throughout the school, and Principal Crestwood, who definitely looks like the villain that she is not happy.
They might as well have just put like a big neon sign over her and said, "Bad guy."
Oh, it's absolutely terrible.
Yeah. But whatever. I mean, you need someone to hate. And part of the reason that you might be softening up on Mark is because of the introduction of this character.
I guess so, but like, you don't really need that much softening up when you see that face. That's a hateful mug, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Bitter for the sake of being bitter.
Yep. It's very blunt.
Is this the scene where the teachers are in the break room, or?
It's one of them, I believe.
Oh, okay.
But it cuts to the awkward interaction between Mark and Nora at the library, where she pretty much figures him out right away.
No, she doesn't. She crosses his face off in the yearbook and is like, cute, but no.
Circles.
And puts an X through.
All
right, hold on. Through the power of technology.
Knights and Nerds is not just an actual play D&D podcast with an original campaign being played by a group of friends who tolerate each other. It's also a podcast where I, the Dungeon Master, talk about how I'm adapting to the choices the players make, as well as revealing to you, the audience, the complex story and deadly twists that I have in store for my players. Find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or at knightsandnerds.com.
And we're back.
I was wrong. There was an X.
Oh, I love hearing it. Can you say it again?
No. One-time deal.
All right. I was getting greedy anyway. So we have this scene where they see each other in the library, and he's returning a book that, in my opinion, maybe she shouldn't put the X in, because it is definitely another clue. It's How to Talk Dirty and Influence People. Is exactly what Happy Harry does.
Yeah, and it's by Lenny Bruce, who the character is actually semi-based off of, so it works perfectly.
But, I mean, Nora, like I said, she crosses it off like she's not considering him, and really, he that should be a hint towards it.
Definitely. Somebody who doesn't really talk much, but is into that much of an outgoing, what's the word I'm looking for here?
I don't
Not
know.
blunt. Offensive way of speaking?
Candid?
I mean, Lenny Bruce was arrested for obscenity on stage.
Fair. Yeah. I don't know. Like, the book should have been more of a giveaway. And I mean, even later in the movie, you see her reading that same book. So even though she puts an X through it, you almost get the feeling like she's not necessarily 100% convinced that it's not him.
Yeah, there's at least a bit of an inkling that she might need to second guess her original decision.
All right, so what's next?
Next, it is nighttime. We have a new broadcast. And we see that more students are gathering at what I believe to be the ball field at the high school.
Including...
Because that's where the best reception is.
Actually, you see this in the very first automobile, is a young Seth Green.
Oh, does he show up that early?
He's the... Okay, so what's the character who gets kicked out with the blonde hair?
I don't remember.
He's the one that hits on Paige. He tries to get back into school later. He gets interviewed. God. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I forget his name. He's actually a writer and director as well. He did Scotland, PA, actually not far from where I am right now in Halifax.
Well, anyway.
Billy Morissette. His name was Maz Mazzilli.
Okay, so Maz is in the car. It's like the very first time you see them in the field, it's him, and then one other car pulls up.
Yeah.
The guy sitting in the passenger seat with him is the young Seth Green.
I missed that, man. I missed that. I thought his first appearance was much later in the film.
No, he's actually even in the tape trading scene in the opening monologue. These are things I did not notice until the second viewing, though, when I was like... Because he's not a focal point on camera until the later scene, which is where I was like, hey, wait a minute. But then when I watched it the second time, I was like, okay, yeah, that's him. Okay, yeah, that's him. But he's just there. He doesn't actually have any... He doesn't have any parts or words or anything. He's just there.
I want to say I'm going to watch it again, but I'm going to have to take a bit of a break. This movie is great, but three times in one day, I don't know, man.
Yeah, sorry, I'm really derailing a lot. Okay, so we're in the field and more cars are showing up.
Yeah, part of the broadcast that's airing is reading the confidential letter that Mark actually stole from his father in the scene you were talking about earlier, which is from the guidance counselor to Principal Mugface regarding the student's unfortunate condition and her being expelled because of such, which I didn't realize that was Cheryl at the beginning, again, like you had said. But Mark decides to call up the guidance counselor and call him out on the show.
Which is a great scene.
It's good, man. It's really good.
When he pretends to be from a radio station that's just doing some research, the guidance counselor gets all, like, he props himself up in his chair. He gets all ready. He's like, yeah, here we go. We're going to get interviewed. And then as soon as he starts asking the difficult questions, the whole, like, the mood changes. And he just kind of deflects the whole thing.
Yeah, it's great. You can see, like, the look on his face is like, that's right, I am this good. I deserve to be on the radio.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's fantastically done. And then when he, again, when... I'm just want to call him Mark because I don't like Happy Harry.
That's fine.
When Mark turns it around and reveals who he is in the letter, it's just such a good, like, gotcha scene in the movie. I really liked it.
Yeah, same. Just a perfect example of Mark having that wit and being able to put people on the spot and call things as they are. And that's why I kind of had Oh, this really built up the soft spot for Mark for me. Was that phone call followed up with the letter that he reads, which actually turns out to be a prank, which I found kind of mean, talking about the sexual harassment or assault between siblings.
Yeah.
And he takes this very seriously, and going so far as to saying being in a screwed up situation in a screwed up place does not make you screwed up. And there are a lot of topics touched upon in the film that aren't typically addressed in a mainstream movie like this.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you've got this outspoken character who is an asshole, but also shows that he has a very soft, understanding side, that they're willing to give him this to work with. It's not something you would actually find in many other films like this.
I agree.
Very good.
I don't have too much more to say about it because for me, a lot of the gravity of that scene was just kind of lost when you just see it's the two girls and they're laughing and they hang out, right? Like,
yeah. And the way he deals with that too, though, he's not entirely sure, but assumes as much and lets it kind of roll off his back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, even when he's talking to them before they hang up, he kind of says, like, are you being honest? Because I can sniff this stuff out. And you can see that he is also, like, he is hesitant to believe it, but he wanted to believe it. I mean, he says as much. He's like, darn, I really wanted that one to be true, right? Like, it would have been an interesting one. But I do love when he says, like, you're not screwed up. You're just having a reaction to a screwed up situation, or however he says it was well worded.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's at this point. I know they kind of touch on it later in the movie, but he's been doing this for a little while. I'm wondering how many letters he's actually getting to the point where people are pranking him. I feel like maybe it's just everyone is a victim to the time limit set for the movie, but I feel like they could have gone in with a few more of the letters. Now, having said that, we do get the next letter, which is the first from the Eat Me, Beat Me lady, who is revealed to be Nora, and Mark calling her out for being exactly like him. Not that wild, a quiet nobody walking the halls, which, again, gives out even more clues about who Mark really is, or who Harry really is.
He's smart. Like, he's really smart, but he's also dumb, which you pointed out earlier. He's a smart idiot. He's a smart idiot. Yes.
What did you think of the next letter, which I think is probably the most impactful one of the movie? Huh? Do you remember what the next letter is?
Is that the one I'm going to kill myself?
From the suicidal teen, Malcolm.
Oh, I thought that was maybe on a later conversation. Okay. This is the scene then where he gets that?
Yeah, and I find it really takes away from the prank, how sincere he was with the prank. Because this is the first time we see him go a little too far. He does pull back a bit, realizes he's being brash. And I think it only really happens when he realizes that he's the one person who this poor kid has actually reached out to.
Well, yeah, because you want to ask the question, like, why is this kid asking, like, a shock jockey or whatever you want to call it, if he should kill himself? And then when you think about it for a minute, it's like, because he has nobody else.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this connection that he has to listening to this guy that he doesn't know on the radio is like the most intimate relationship he has that he can ask, should I kill myself? Yeah. And I think that the prank was almost necessary to create a little bit more of the skepticism in Mark. Because he just
That's a very good point, actually. That is a very good point.
Like, he just got pranked. And now he's reading another letter about a guy who doesn't give a lot of detail and says he's just going to kill himself. And he's just like, oh, maybe I'm not going to get burnt twice in a row. Like, maybe this isn't as serious as it is. And he starts off very brash. And then I think during the course of the conversation, he starts to realize this one's not a prank. And I might have gone too far.
Yeah, definitely pulls in the reins. admits that he's also alone, how he didn't talk to a single person that day, how he reads books in the stairwell.
Again,
Giving another clue about who he really is. But then Malcolm hangs up the phone.
yeah. And in this situation, my thought is, because he tries to call him back.
Yeah.
But you can infer that Malcolm is listening to the radio show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see as much that he has the radio on in his room. Mark tries to call him back, but he doesn't, like, on the radio say, like, hey, if you're still listening, don't do it. Because you kind of almost feel like he's realized that it's serious, and that's why he's trying to call him back. But it just seems like if you have a live mic in front of you, you would have at least tried to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
And
But
then,
it's also, you have to look at the roller coaster he went on in those 3 letters in a row, though.
yeah, no, I agree. But I do also want to say, the next day is when Nora finds him reading in a stairway.
Yep.
Even if you said on air, I read in the stairway by myself, and you're like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have said that. That's too telling. Maybe the next day, don't do it.
Yeah, just don't, man.
Maybe that day, eat your lunch in the library or something. Like, don't,
He's terrible at keeping his identity a secret. He is the worst.
like, don't do the exact thing you said you do the day after you said you do it.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Just a
don't.
thought.
Just don't.
Sorry, I jumped ahead, but I don't know if you still had something to say about the previous scenes.
No. Anything leading up to that is just more tape trading at the school. Mark goes up and tries to talk to a girl and fails miserably. Then hears, I think,
so miserably. But you know what? I don't think it's that he failed necessarily, because
he gave up.
He says hi to her,
Yeah.
but then somebody starts playing a recording of the show from the previous night.
I thought that happened afterwards.
I'd have to double check, and I think we'll have to just say kind of vague, but I will share my thought. I thought that I saw, he says hi, there's kind of like a moment of awkwardness, which you're not going to get away from, and then somebody behind him hits play on a show from him the night before. He kind of looks over his shoulder and then walks away, because he's just like, this is not a situation I want to be in. Like, it was almost like somebody playing his tape was a sign like, hey, this isn't you, get out of here.
Yeah, I'll go along with you on that one.
Sure.
But then, yeah, that is where we end up with him in the stairwell reading, and Nora finds him there.
Chewing the same gum that he says in the very first monologue that he chews.
Yeah. Is it blackjack?
Yeah, blackjack.
Okay,
black
here's
licorice
the question. Going back to that. Choose blackjack gum, has wild cherry Pepsi.
Diet Pepsi. Wild
Diet
cherry Diet
Pepsi.
Pepsi. Yep.
Yeah, so he doesn't drink. Smokes like a chimney, though. Like, I don't understand that one.
There's a lot of chain smokers in this high school. They're totally cool with it. But I mean, like,
Oh, yeah.
here's the thing. He doesn't say, like, oh yeah, I chew juicy fruit. He takes a gum that is a very specific flavor palette.
Yeah.
And then goes and sits where he says he's, like, dude just wants to get caught. And Nora is just like, are you really as horny as a 10-peckered owl? And, like, she's kind of hitting on him, kind of not, kind of being who he says she is, kind of being not. And then was like, oh, I'm going to go ditch and have a smoke. You want to join me? And he's like, no. It just gets out of there.
Oh, Mark. It does take a bit of a sad turn, though, because this is where we find out in class that Malcolm actually did, in fact, kill himself the previous night.
I have to say, this is probably the most lasting image with me in this movie.
The look on Mark's face.
The look on his face when he kind of leans back in his chair and kind of like, oh my God. Like, Christian Slater could not have played that better.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like, he nails this movie.
I said it earlier, it's the emotion. He captures the emotion so appropriately in the movie when he needs to. And like that moment, you can almost feel the thoughts that are running through his head, even before he says it, it's like, I should have done better. Like, he just does it so well. I'm going to stop gushing over him, but yeah, he does so well.
No, it's fine, man. Like, I think this movie, more than any of his others, it's appropriate to gush about how well he acted in this, because he's really well known in Hollywood as being like in a perpetual impression of Jack Nicholson, and how like at some point he has to play Jack Nicholson in a movie, or like play his son in a movie. But here he actually shows that he can act, and he can act really well.
He can play two roles in the same movie, because he is essentially playing two characters, and he pulls off both of them.
Yeah. Well, I'd say he plays more than two characters, because he does a really good job next at playing the worst secret agent ever and allows Nora to follow him to the post office where he picks up his mail. What a terrible job of staying anonymous.
Yep. And
and he acts so sketchy when he gets there.
But she catches him and essentially tells him what's in the letter that he just read, to reveal that she is the woman who's been sending the letters, right?
Which was great.
But
I love that part.
She gets there and she's like, so it is you. And it's like, you needed to see that? The stairway encounter wasn't enough for you? Like, I get that he didn't say in the stairway, yeah, it's me. But like, there was enough clues there that you really didn't need to be like, aha, in this situation. This was just
It gets worse. It gets so much worse. He denies it, holding the letter that she mailed him. You with me?
Yeah. It's hilarious. Like, there's so many, much like Mark being like the smartest idiot or the dumbest smart person. This movie is the dumbest smart movie I've seen.
I love it.
Anyway, so yeah, he leaves. He just walks away from her. Like, yeah, that's not me, I'm out of here. Let me just take these letters that are addressed to me out of here.
Mark. Then we end up seeing another confrontation with him and his parents, trying to be good parents and convince him to open up and talk to somebody, butting heads with their son, trying to understand, though, without really taking the time to understand his point of view.
They are
it's like they're letting him talk, but they're not hearing what he's saying. And vice versa.
They're so understanding, though. They're like, did you know this kid? Like, they're showing concern. Yeah. And then, unlike most parents in these movies, they're like, it's almost like they've accepted the fact, like, you're not going to talk to your parents, right? Like, we're smart enough to know you're not going to talk to us. Maybe you should talk to a psychologist. Not because you have a problem, but because we realize that you're not going to talk to us. Maybe you need to talk to a neutral party. I'm sitting here thinking, these are fantastic parents. And he just goes
very
off.
Progressive parents for 1990.
Now, in this scene, I can understand that he's a little bit more of a jerk.
Yeah.
Because he's dealing with the emotion and the guilt of the suicide. In the first scene, he was just being a jerk. Right? So, like,
yes,
if we didn't have that jerk confrontation in the first scene, I would have just thought, yeah, he's reeling. Like, he had I guess you could call it traumatic experience. And he's in a tough spot. But
yeah,
these parents are really nice.
Yeah, his parents are great. Absolutely great. I like, could you ask any more of parents in 1990 to try and talk to their kid who's obviously having a hard time in a new town at a new school with no friends and obviously dealing with something huge on their shoulders?
In this hypothetical situation, yes, everything is a little different, though. I mean, it's hard to say, every 90s. But in this situation, they are as good as they can be.
Yeah, agreed.
So then he goes downstairs and
for the next broadcast.
Decides he's going to hang it up. He says he's not going to do it anymore.
Well, yeah, it's after he admits that he never told Malcolm not to do it.
Yep.
Then the show's over. That's it. For about 3-4 seconds. And he's back on the air.
Well, I mean,
let people know that the only people who understand what they're feeling are themselves.
I think
don't be ashamed of how you feel. how their pain's real. The show isn't real since he won't even use his real voice. Just inciting people, freaking out on the radio, and it's what sets the fire under everyone to lash out.
To be fair, I think the few minutes that he's
much.
off the air is him wrestling with the idea that he can't just give up Harry that easily because it is a part of him. Right? Like, I know it's done very quickly, but like...
No, I get that too. And the weight behind that would be amazing. If it was the only time he does this.
Yeah. But I mean, even in that speech, he says, like, don't do that anything extreme, like kill yourself, but stand up for yourself.
Yes.
And this is where we see Paige doing the stupidest thing you could do for someone who has a Yale interview.
Well, not even for somebody who has a Yale interview, but would you put explosives and projectiles like pearls in a microwave, turn the microwave on, and then sit 10 feet away directly in front of it?
But to be fair, I don't even know if you would necessarily need to call them explosives, but any metal in a microwave.
Well, it looked like hairspray.
Oh, was it hairspray?
Yeah, it was aerosol cans.
Oh, I missed that. I saw like trophies and the ribbons and stuff. You know, things that show like she's accomplished. I must have missed the hairspray.
I hope I'm right about that one. I'm pretty sure there were aerosol cans.
I didn't catch everything that was in the pile, but clearly it was meant to represent the superficial sides of her, the looks, the academics, the things that she uses to please her parents and not herself.
Yeah.
But like
everything that makes her the person that people want her to be.
Yes. But like metal and a microwave and then sit there, it's not a smart idea.
But like the way she reacts to it when it explodes, it's like it totally surprises her.
Yeah.
She ain't that smart, apparently.
Maybe in the 90s they didn't know yet that you don't put metal in a microwave.
Yale bound. Jesus Christ.
All right, so what happens next?
What happens next is another heavy situation, man. And I love that they actually tackle all of this stuff in this movie, but it just seems so unbalanced. But this is where we get the guy on the phone, the young student who was about to have his first homosexual experience, and he assures Harry that he's not ashamed of what he did or what was happening. But then, as he's describing what was happening, it turns into a humiliation as the other guy and his friends pull a horrible prank on him and like steal his clothes and make him do things, and it turns to a conversation about, you know, why are people born the way they are and how strong people can be,
and acceptance too, right?
And acceptance. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about unity and how everybody's more alike than they think, and everybody really needs the same things, which is I don't know about that statement. I see what they're going for with it in the movie, but I don't really know if that's necessarily true.
Well, they were clearly trying to show that he wasn't going to make the same mistake again. And like,
exactly,
yes,
yeah.
They're not going to be like, okay, let's give him another suicide, right?
Yeah, no, we all need support.
But like, it goes to show that he's like, okay, he realized that he doesn't just have a show, he has a voice that people listen to. And maybe it is his personality that he is very accepting of what he's hearing, right? Which very likely with the personality that he has. But it goes to show that that has seeped over to Happy Harry, and he's taking a little bit more responsibility for what is being brought to him.
I think it shows that he's trying to. He seems to waver a little bit. Like, he's saying the things that he thinks people need to hear. I don't know if it's what he's fully accepted himself yet. And I think that kind of goes over with the guy's response on the phone, which is brilliant writing, when he just says, I guess nobody knows, huh?
Yeah.
Which is direct conflict to the theme that Harry uses when he goes on every night of everybody knows.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a well done scene.
Yeah, brilliant.
And then
the cuts in this movie, man, like you go from a scene like that to like rapid storytelling. Like, people are rebroadcasting Harry's show beyond state lines. It's time to bring in the feds. Like, okay, well, that just took an unnecessary turn. Almost like they shot down the importance of the previous scene.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of progressing the plot.
Yep.
But it does cut after that to one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Okay.
Which is just Mark walking home through the housing development. And I do have to say, in the 80s and 90s, when dealing with the youth in film, I love when they use a suburban environment. It could be a horror film like Return of the Living Dead 2, this movie in particular. But when you have a character who's an outsider moving through a place like the suburbs where every house is being built to look the same, almost down to like you have an option of a certain option of like 10 colors you can paint your house based off of what the zoning has allowed. It's almost like the houses are being built to be the same, but not quite there yet. Just like Mark in this scenario is being built to be like his parents, but he's not quite there and there's still time to change.
Oh, you took a lot out of that. I took he was walking.
No, and I've always loved that. That's always stood out to me, having the outsider character going through
I absolutely
a suburban neighborhood.
I absolutely get what you're saying. It kind of opened my eyes to that. Like the theory of the conformity of these houses because they are built so uniform in the suburbs. And
Yes.
matching that with what like the educational system is trying to do. And like they're trying to build these students like Paige to be like in a mold. And
Yes.
he's kind of standing in contrast to that. But when I watched it in real time, I was just like, yeah, he's walking. That's cool.
I would recommend anybody who doesn't even plan on or hasn't watched this movie, doesn't plan on watching it, to at least track down this scene. You can find it on YouTube because the music used in the scene is by the Pixies. It's the only time they use the Pixies on the soundtrack. Very powerful scene when you really think about what's being put on film.
Is this where all the students are starting to revolt?
Yeah, it's teachers are rounding up tape sellers. They're finding graffiti everywhere. It's where we see full-on Seth Green's power mullet.
Yeah, because he plays a tape on the PA system, is it?
Yeah, they re-rigged the PA system, and I've listened to that twice. I'm still not entirely sure what's happening. I hear like animal sounds and then some like broken monologue. What am I missing here?
I don't know.
Perfect.
Is this the scene where Maz comes back with the sign? And they try to like, because he's already been expelled and they're trying to tell him like, get out of here.
I don't think it's that point yet. Oh, wait. No, I don't think it's at that point yet.
Okay.
It's just more so news is further. We see the news. Actually, yeah, it is when Matt shows up because he's got the sign, or not the sign, but he's setting off the smoke bombs, the purple smoke bombs, the school colors.
Hey man, you have the notes. I don't know. I don't remember when that was.
Anyway, it's where Nora tells Mark about how Paige threw her pearls and hairspray and whatnot in the microwave and blowing it up because he told people to go wild. And again, he realizes that things are out of control. And then Mark goes to the post office, finds that the police know where his P.O. box is, maybe because he gives it out all of the time.
Yep. Because he's an idiot who's really smart.
Yeah, he is the genius idiot.
He was smart enough to sign up for the mailbox with a fake name.
That is true. For the school. But, I don't... It's tough, man. Like, I want to like this character a lot, but he messes up so much.
Just move forward, man. Just move forward.
All right, I'm sorry.
It's best
I'm
not
sorry.
to... You're not going to figure it out. Next scene
anyway.
Next scene is the PTA meeting where they're trying to figure out what's to be done about this.
What's with these young whippersnappers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's obviously the teachers or at least the higher up teachers want to talk about how they can fix a problem with the kids. And it's really cool here because we start seeing the parents and teachers standing up to the higher authority, which is really interesting because like kids just want to be happy. We need to help kids, even like talking about things like drug addiction. Then Paige shows up to tell everyone that the kids' problems have always been there and they're just being shown now. How she isn't perfect. She was forced to act like that.
I think
And
the
then,
best part of that scene is that she says, "You guys aren't listening," and then none of them listen to her.
yeah.
You're just not listening. Get out of here, girl.
But then she goes full on crazy in front of every news camera in town. And is not helping her cause whatsoever.
Nope.
Not at all.
Nope.
Now she just looks crazy. And not that like, oh, this girl's off her hinges. More like I think she snapped and she might need to be locked up.
Hey,
Because it's like goofy, embarrassing, crazy.
I get that they were trying to show what kind of impact, negative impact, all the pressure can have on like a teenager, but it's not done well.
That's bad acting. That's real bad acting.
It's not done well.
There's a lot of bad acting in this movie, actually. A lot of bad reactionary acting.
Can you tell me one good actor in this movie that's not Christian Slater? And
Samantha Mathis.
Really?
Nora. Yeah.
She does a lot of overacting too.
Yeah, well, this I think was her first big movie before. I think her next big movie after this was Super Mario Brothers. I know she wasn't good in that, but come on.
Honestly, I think the second best actor was the guy who called about his homosexuality.
Yeah, that's true. He had less screen time, though.
And Nora wasn't the worst by any means, but there are quite a few scenes where she overacted a little too much.
I think that's also the lines that she was given, too.
Fair.
Like, her lines weren't really written that well, and if she had to stick to say what was exactly on the script, that would be a tough go.
Fair.
I did like the chemistry between her and Christian Slater, though, and I only found out today that it was because they had already been in a relationship for like a year leading up to that.
I did not know that, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think after the PTA meeting, the movie goes on fast forward. Or maybe my copy did.
Nope, it's pretty much it. Everyone gathers at the ballpark that night's broadcast.
Yep, and he's burning stuff and then...
Burning all of his letters. She tracks him down because she knows where he lives somehow. I don't know if he said that on air too, but he may as well.
She might have just followed him from the post office because he's not very stealthy.
Well, he was doing his best speed walk away from the police car because they also knew where he was.
Yep. But I mean,
yeah.
Hey, she gets through to him in probably the best way you can reach a teenage boy. She takes her top off.
Yes.
Wait, that happens after the parent
That's later.
confrontation.
Yeah.
It's still same. It's still the same time frame. It's just after he talks to his parents.
Yeah, but you missed something that, again, really grinds my gears.
Okay. Go ahead.
So after we ignore the question of how does she know where he lives, he admits he can't talk to her, and then goes on air to talk about how he can't talk to her while she's standing right next to him.
Yep.
Then his parents interrupt.
Yes, because they were listening to the radio upstairs, and they go downstairs to check on him, and he hides all this stuff.
And Nora covers for him. And the parents are just stoked that he has a girl over.
They're like, oh, okay, yeah, be alone in your room. We're out of here. Good job, son.
Yep.
And I also find it funny, though, that like he's trying to hide all of his equipment that his dad bought him to keep in contact with his friends in New York.
Which is another point I have with this movie.
Okay.
If he bought the shortwave setup so he can stay in touch with his friends back east, does that mean all of his friends back east have the same setup? Because that doesn't look cheap.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Why can't he keep in touch with his friends by calling them on the
Long
landline?
distance, man. Long distance.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Most houses only had one line, dude.
Fair.
I don't think you're going to call the East Coast from Phoenix for like a 5-minute call.
I guess it does make sense because, I mean, his dad was able to find amazing ham radio equipment that can broadcast on FM stations.
Yeah, that's another problem. That is another problem for sure.
But anyway, okay, all right. So Nora covers for him, and then
he decides to broadcast again.
Yes.
Yep. Calls the school. Call is traced. Which leads me to another problem.
Yes.
Why would he be ready for the police to track him down?
I don't know.
Because it doesn't make any sense.
Why would the police be prepared for him to call the helpline?
I think only because he called the guidance counselor first and everything was getting ramped up.
Oh.
They were just expecting him. I don't know. That's my speculation. There's nothing stated about that in the movie. But that seems like a really weird, like, fail-safe. That if they traced the call, it would go to, like, his neighbor's place.
Well, because he even says they're paying the bill. So it sounds like he tapped into their phone line to do this. And...
Oh, that makes perfect sense. I missed that.
Yeah, he says, like, oh, the police are going to be pulling up to an unsuspecting couple's house, and they don't know that they've been paying my phone bill or something like that.
Yeah.
And
okay, that makes sense.
So I don't know if he did it necessarily to mask himself so much as
it was just a happy accident.
Yeah, because he needed to...
I'll go with that. That makes me less angry.
Yeah, so like he doesn't have a phone bill for it or something like that. But
well, my next note kind of sums up the scene pretty well, I think.
Okay.
Outdoor sex? Sure. Wait. No.
Yep.
Next day at school. Most awkward kiss ever.
Hold on. It's a good thing that he can't talk to her, but he can kiss her.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's debatable. I don't know if you saw the day after.
I'm just saying, like, social hesitation doesn't necessarily stop at the vocabulary level.
Yeah. But, dude, it looked like she was going to eat his jaw.
That's some of that fine acting she did.
Yep. And luckily for us, right after that, Mark decides he's not broadcasting again ever. What's that, third time?
I don't know. I lost track.
Ugh. Okay. This is what we were talking about before, where the school's actually falling apart now. Kids are being expelled more. Students are being physically abused. Teachers who care about it are being fired. Again, we go back to a line that we didn't touch on earlier, but it's don't rock the boat, especially when you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be a theme right now, is like trying to save the sinking ship.
Is it revealed yet why these kids are being expelled?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, okay. But this is the scene where Maz tries to get in with the sign.
Yeah.
And that all he I forget what the sign says.
I think it was like, I just want an education or something like that.
I deserve, or I'm entitled to an education. This sign bothered me so much.
Why?
Because he puts, I forget what the term is, but he says like, I deserve a education.
Oh yeah, that's
not
rough.
An education. And in my mind, I'm like, the teacher should just pick up this sign and be like, oh, you poor kid, come with me. Let's fill you with knowledge. It just, you know me, there's always going to be one odd thing in a movie that I just can't let go. And for me, it was like, this kid brought a sign with bad grammar asking to be taught. And it's like, yeah, it's admirable. This dude just wants to be taught. He was kicked out for stupid reasons like everybody else.
Dress code.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I mean, they find excuses to get rid of the people that are going to bring down the SAT scores, right? So he's clearly not a genius, but like, he's not like the slacker kid in the movie who is dumb and just doesn't care.
No, he does have a head on his shoulders for sure.
He's the dumb kid in the movie who is self-aware and wants to improve, which again is another character stereotype that they kind of changed, which I found refreshing. But in my mind, I was like, come on, man. Come on.
You find out that the teacher punched him. He's like, no time for hanging signs. We need to get you in a classroom. Drag him in the school.
Yeah, but it should have been an education, not a education. And that's stuck out. Well,
we now know that the FCC is in town, which leads everyone to believe that Mark is done.
Well, I mean, he's causing riots.
He is. He's definitely causing riots where they were carrying picnic tables and a giant penis, which I have no idea where they got that from. That was previously in the movie.
I don't know. I have
Don't know.
no comment.
Interesting scene next between the principal and Mark's father.
Yes, where
he's just... This is where it just comes up, where he's really upset that the principal's punishing teenagers for being teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Then it is time to mobilize the studio, which I thought was a weird montage scene. I don't know how you felt about that.
Was this the scene where he suspended the principal? No. Okay.
No.
So many of these scenes are so similar.
They are. No. This is now where Mark knows that the FCC is going to be looking for him, so they need to get his radio station of sorts on the move.
Yes.
Which I found really funny because it's always Nora driving while he's basically broadcasting. They never even show him get the Jeep to Nora's place because in real life Slater lost his license after 2 DUIs and wasn't allowed to drive during the movie.
I do like how his mom didn't notice that the van was the Jeep was gone.
Just gone.
And I mean, I'm glad they put the Jeep in there so that they could have an unnecessary chase scene, because that's what this movie was missing.
Those cars are just, those vans, FCC vans, just weaving in and out of trying to miss each other, almost causing more accidents. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
They can't catch these two teenagers with a radio unit in the Jeep.
It was like Benny Hill with vans. But the next scene is where we get to what you were saying before, between the principal and Mark's father, after finding out that the principal's been weeding out any students with low SAT scores.
Yeah, to keep up the funding.
Anyone she saw as a potential problem. And how she didn't delist them, so they'd still be getting paid
funding.
For having funding for the students being
without bringing down the average.
Exactly. And Mark's father is furious, and I didn't realize the commissioner could suspend a principal, but apparently that is the case.
I don't know. I don't know how the hierarchy in that situation works.
Me neither, but I just went with it.
I do want to say, though, if we suspend disbelief and assume that the commissioner is above the principal, you'd think the principal would know that.
You would think so.
Right? Like, you don't go to your job and be like, oh, wait, the manager is above me? Right? Like, in this situation, in the hypothetical situation, which might be accurate, I'm not going to say we know, but in the situation that he was of an authority that he could do that, she should be aware of it. And she's like, you can't do that. Oh,
especially if she's able to come up with a scheme that intricate that she wouldn't know what he's capable of doing.
Yep. But hey, she got hers.
And then Mark and Nora arrive at a high school field or ballpark.
Yes, and now they're there to the praise of the adoration of their fans. The principal, the evil has been thwarted. Good wins the day. The end. They lived happily ever after.
I don't know, man. He goes on his monologue, and I've got some problems with that.
Oh, there's more to the movie?
Oh, the flaws in his idea that, high school is terrible. It doesn't get anywhere. That there's nowhere to go but up. Like, yeah, that's a perfect example of a growing mind that's stunted. Like, understanding the past, living the now, and have no single thought of the future. Bam, then apprehended.
Yeah. So that you have the happy ending of him being arrested.
And, of course, the last 2 words he says before being shoved in the van.
Think hard?
Talk hard.
Talk hard. Sorry.
End of movie. And you get voices popping up all over different private radio stations.
Because people are speaking up and they're following his example, and yay.
It is the birth of podcasting.
The movie really should have ended prior to him being arrested.
Yeah. Where would you have ended it?
The principal gets suspended. They get away in the van after the audience cheers them.
We're going to take Happy Harry Hard on nationwide.
Well, no, not necessarily. Like, maybe he does get disconnected or whatever, but like
Mark and Nora's road tour.
Like, if you're gonna leave the movie on a semi-ambiguous ending, because you don't know what's gonna happen with the trial, if he's gonna be arrested, if he's gonna be released, like, you don't know, right? Let you just leave that with, you don't know what's gonna happen with his radio show from there, or
You've got the like text that kind of pops up over still images of every character.
he was convicted
Mark
to 50
talked
years.
too hard in jail and was found dead in his cell.
Yeah, like, I mean, he could have, as they're driving through the field with all of the students there and his voice modulator craps out and they can hear his regular voice, he could have said something like, "This is my last broadcast. Now it's up to you guys to take over the airwaves," and leave it ambiguous there. At least then you can say it's a happy ending.
Or go the comedy ending. The modulator breaks and everyone's like, "Oh, it was Mark all along." They just throw their stereos on the ground and drive away.
All right, so that's the movie.
That was a movie.
What did you think?
I was gonna ask you, but I'll go into it.
I was first.
It's a bad movie.
Oh, it's a bad movie.
It's a real bad movie.
So bad.
But it does tackle a lot of important themes that movies weren't touching at the time.
This is why I said at the beginning I was torn if I should evaluate it on the merits of it as a movie or on the merits of its message. It has some fantastic messages. As I was watching the movie, I was very interested to see what they would address, how they would address it, but I was not entertained.
Are you not entertained?
No, I am not. I was going through the motions just to see what happens next.
I was entertained.
I think I would have been fine with reading it as a short story.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I told you that Mark's character was half based off of Lenny Bruce. The other half was Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye, but I never read that book.
Me neither.
Good. Who cares?
So that's your thoughts on the movie?
No, I love how they talked a lot about the lack of identity, like self-doubt, Mark spending days alone, reading his stairwell, talking to nobody other than the teachers, like trying to smile, but the smile comes out all wrong. I'm a sucker for a story about the outsider. There was a lot of attempt at honest communication, acknowledgement of a need for change. I found it interesting that the kids are trying to figure out their feelings. The parents are also trying, but they're not trying to understand, not really listening. And the principal and the higher ups at school just don't care. And the whole time the news is just trying to exploit the scenario. When it comes to ideas, like obviously today, it would be the birth of podcasting. I don't even think you could make this movie today. If you did, what could you change? Like there's so many voices out there now that, I mean, you're not being heard. Back then it was the pirate radio station. It was a new thing. There was only one there. Everybody tuned in. Now everybody can do their own thing, and who's going to tune in?
Yeah, technology kind of makes it impossible to do this movie today unless you're doing it as a timepiece in an earlier time.
Well, yeah, it's tech advancement and the new norm of shared information.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we get teenagers thinking too much of themselves now, yet thinking the same way about the same things. Youth with mental health issues reaching out to the only person they think they can talk to, understand. But by doing that today, a lot of the time their words will fall on deaf ears. I think people are more willing to get their voices out there than to listen. And now they can do it as easily as going to a store and buying a microphone, or just using their MacBook if they have just use the microphone there, or just even a gaming headset like I used to use.
Yeah.
There was one review from 1990 I found saying that everything was kind of wrapped up too quickly in the film to actually really focus on any problem or the premise. Like they couldn't go too deep into it because as it was brought up steadily throughout the movie, you just had an ending and you were left to, I guess, decide for yourself what you should be getting out of it. It wasn't just given to you. We didn't actually have an ending, like you said, like just Mark being shoved into a van.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like there were so many interesting points to talk about, so many good themes, but it was just a bad movie.
I agree. It was a bad movie. This movie was a series of some well thought out monologues, some decently done public service announcements, haphazardly woven together into a movie.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way of summing it up.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of money backing the movie, so it's not like I had a whole lot of expectation going in. I knew I had seen it before, so I knew it wasn't anything over the top, and it was very much character based. I don't really know exactly how much the budget was, but I know most of the music, and it only pulled in about between 11 and $12 million. But I think it really caught people off guard at the time it came out. It definitely turned into a cult classic. I just don't think people were ready for it when it came out. And honestly, going back and revisiting it now, you really have to put yourself through an hour and 45 minutes of some mind-numbing character development to really get to the points that are valuable. But I think you should just try and trudge through the mess that is some of this writing just to get to those letters and those phone calls that we were talking about earlier. The meat of the movie happens sparsely throughout, but when you actually get it, it's amazing.
I, on the other hand, do not recommend this movie.
Oh, why?
Because it's not a good movie.
Yeah, it's a bad movie.
Somehow it has a 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb.
Yeah, it's even better on Rotten Tomatoes, I think.
Do not watch this movie. Avoid it at all costs. Save yourself an hour and 42 minutes and look up a YouTube video where somebody has just cut together the better scenes in like a 20-minute like monologue or montage. Don't watch the movie. You do not need any of the parts in between the actual insightful scenes to get the message. The movie ain't putting any of it together for you. Just go to YouTube and look up some of the scenes that we referenced.
Yeah, most importantly, that scene that I said earlier with the Pixies playing, where Mark's walking through the suburban development. But this was the director Allan Moyle. It was one of his first movies he had written as well as directed. Pretty early in his career. For an early attempt, I will cut him some slack for that. But he also did strengthen as he went on, and he also directed one of my favorite movies, being Empire Records, also dealing with teen themes.
Such a good movie.
Yeah, right?
Love Empire Records. I could watch that one 12 times over.
I think I have, actually.
I probably have. I'm not even kidding. I've probably seen that one easily 12 to 15 times.
Yeah, fantastic movie. You know what? Read up on Pump Up the Volume. Watch Empire Records.
I'm saying, like, you could probably find the key scenes that we focused on YouTube. It'll probably take you 15 to 20 minutes to watch that instead of an hour and 42 minutes. You'll get the same message out of it without the convoluted movie around it. You might miss on some of Christian Slater's acting because it is a shame that his performance in this movie is wasted on this movie.
Agreed.
But then go watch Empire Records because it's a far superior picture.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it is.
That's our thoughts on the movie. If you want to share your thoughts on the movie, you can hit us up. We're on Facebook, BS Bargain Bin. We're on Twitter, BS Bargain Bin. You can, it's kind of funny to say now, old technology, email us at bsbargainbin@outlook.com. And just
please do. I would love to hear some feedback on Pump Up the Volume, even questions about like maybe what the actors have done or themes that we might have missed or maybe just weighed too heavily on.
Sure, yeah. And while you guys are doing that, I will prepare for our next podcast, which, Ben, what are we watching?
Next week, we are watching / talking about 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf.
2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. 2014's
Speed limit 25. Easy, boy.
It reminds me of that place that we used to live in when I was a kid.
Looks like we beat the movers here. I can't see you, but you smell beautiful.
Did you just move next door?
Hi, Mom. Didn't think you'd still be awake.
What the hell is that? Easy, boy. Dolores! Dolores! Dolores!
None of the neighbors saw any sign of this assailant. It's just an animal attack.
This has happened before.
Attacks like these happen all the time. Please, stay in your house, keep the doors closed until we sort this out, okay?
Seems like such a nice place to live.
People don't come to places like this to live. They come here to die. Can you make silver bullets?
Yeah.
Can you do silver shotgun shells?
All right. Well, until then, have a good one, guys.
All the best, guys.